Most people think the General Lee from the Dukes of Hazzard was just a bright orange muscle car doing impossible stunts. But the truth behind TV's most iconic Charger is stranger than fiction. To survive those famous jumps, engineers loaded trunks with up to 1,000 pounds of ballast and rigged the suspension in ways you'd never notice. Production started out with just 3 cars in Georgia, but the mayhem quickly spiraled, ultimately destroying more than 250 Chargers as the show's stunt demands exploded. So how did a simple TV car turn into a machine built for mayhem? And what secrets did the studios hide to pull it off? Here are 20 weird facts you didn't know about the General Lee, and the story is way wilder than you think. Number 20. The General Lee's most famous stunts weren't just about speed, they were about physics. Early on, every jump risked disaster. The Charger's heavy V8 engine sat far forward, so the first time they launched one off a ramp, the front end dove hard, nose first. That's how you turn a muscle car into scrap metal in a single shot. Mechanics needed a fix. Fast. The answer came in the form of ballast. Lots of it. Trunks were packed with sandbags, concrete blocks, even steel plates. Sometimes, over 500 pounds of weight was strapped down as far back as possible, right above the rear axle. For the biggest jumps, the load crept up to nearly 1,000 pounds. The goal was simple: shift the car's center of gravity so it would fly level, or even tail high, instead of pitching down like a lawn dart. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. After a few trial runs, the difference was obvious. Cars that had once buried their grills in the dirt now landed flat enough for the cameras to keep rolling, at least until the next wreck. But ballast alone wasn't enough. The front suspension needed help too. Every time a Charger hit a ramp, the nose would compress, scraping the front valance and sometimes snapping steering parts. So the crew got creative. Spring spacers, simple metal pucks, were slipped above or below the coils, jacking up the ride height by an inch or more. Some cars got police package springs, stiffer and taller than anything Dodge offered the public. For the most extreme jumps, shocks were swapped for heavy-duty truck units, and the whole front end sat high, ready to absorb the blow. None of this was visible on screen. To viewers, every General Lee looked showroom fresh, even as each one was secretly tuned for survival. The mechanics behind the scenes, names rarely mentioned in credits, became masters of quick prep and last-minute fixes. They'd check every weld, reinforce the roll cage, and bolt the ballast in tight, knowing that one missed detail could mean disaster for both car and driver. Jump after jump, the hidden engineering paid off. Stunt drivers learned to trust the setup, hitting ramps at 55 or 60 miles an hour, knowing the car's mass was dialed in for a safe arc. It wasn't luck. It was hundreds of pounds of science tucked away in the trunk and a front end riding higher than any street Charger dared. That's how the General Lee became the king of TV car jumps, and why so many of those spectacular landings didn't end in catastrophe, at least for the driver. The car itself? That was another story. The first 5 episodes of The Dukes of Hazzard were filmed in Georgia, where the General Lee was more a garage project than a factory product. Henry Holman's H&H Auto Body ran on local grit and late nights, patching together whatever Chargers they could find. Warner Brothers had budgeted for just 3 cars, Lee 1, Lee 2, and Lee 3, thinking that would cover the pilot. It didn't even last a week. Stunt after stunt, the cars came back bent, buckled, or simply unsalvageable. By the end of Georgia filming, 5 different General Lees had cycled through the set, sometimes patched up overnight, sometimes sent off for scrap. Holman's team worked with what they had. Paint was mixed by eye, graphics hand-applied, and repairs handled with a mix of skill and desperation. One day might bring a Charger with a gold roof, the next a car with mismatched wheels and a hand-cut roll bar. The goal wasn't perfection, it was survival. Crews learned to keep spare hoods, doors, and even roof sections on hand, swapping them between cars as needed. Invoices from this era are rare, But the stories are not. Mechanics sleeping in the shop, racing the sunrise to get another Lee ready for a jump. Then came California. After the pilot, Warner Brothers moved production west, and the General Lee became an assembly line product. Cinema Vehicles and the Veluzat brothers took over, turning out batches of Chargers in a process that looked more like a Detroit factory than a rural garage. Rows of orange cars lined the lot, each prepped for a different fate, some for beauty shots, most for destruction. The Veluzats and Ray Claridge at Cinema Vehicles built cars in bulk, sometimes 6 or 10 at a time, each one meant to be used up and replaced. Uniform paint, standardized graphics, and regimented welds became the norm. The shop rivalry was real. Holman's Georgia crew prided themselves on improvisation, while the California teams boasted about efficiency and consistency. Both sides had their legends, but the numbers told the story. Over the show's run, somewhere between 255 and 325 Chargers were used up, more than one car per episode, sometimes several in a single day. Ben Jones, who played Cooter, later said, about 325 met their end on the show. Some cars lasted only a few hours. The destruction was staggering. What started as a 3-car plan became a demolition derby on a national scale, with the General Lee transformed from a TV prop into an industrial commodity. By the time collectors caught on and prices soared, it was too late. The show's appetite for Chargers had already changed the car's fate forever. Number 15. The General Lee was always supposed to be a 1969 Dodge Charger. At least, that's what the script called for. But by the time the show started burning through cars at a record pace, sourcing only 69s was a fantasy. The solution? Platform swaps. Mechanics would haul in a 1968 Charger, then spend a morning swapping out the grille and taillights to mimic a 69. The trick worked so well that even die-hard fans struggled to spot the difference unless they caught a quick shot of the dash or the wrong side marker. With practice, the crew could convert a 68 to a screen-ready 69 in under 8 hours, sometimes less if the next jump was on the call sheet. It was a practical magic act, and it kept the show rolling as real 69s vanished from junkyards. The deception didn't stop at the body. Under the hood, the General Lee was a rolling hierarchy. Cars destined for close-ups or gentle driving scenes usually ran the 318 cubic inch small block V8, a reliable, low-stress engine that could idle all day without complaint. These were the cars you'd see gliding through Hazzard Square or sliding around a dirt road, never destined for flight. But when it came time for a big jump, the shop foreman gave the nod to a different breed. Stunt cars were loaded up with 383s, or, for the wildest flights, the mighty 440 cubic inch big block. More power meant more speed off the ramp, and more speed meant a longer, more dramatic arc for the cameras. Every jump car ran the A727 Torque Flight Automatic, a transmission tough enough to survive the abuse, at least until the landing. Stunt driver Craig Baxley remembered the difference. He'd test a car on the lot, listen to the engine, feel the pull, then call out whether it was a flyer or a cruiser. Sometimes, a car would arrive looking perfect but hiding a tired motor. Those got reassigned to background duty or parked as extras. The real jump candidates were handpicked, tuned, and sometimes even dyno tested to make sure they'd hit the right speed at the end of the ramp. The result was seamless on screen. One episode might feature a 68 in disguise for a jump, a true 69 for a close-up, and a third car with a 318 just for slow-motion slides. Viewers saw one orange Charger tearing across Hazzard County. But behind the scenes, it was a relay race of swapped parts and engine swaps. Each car prepped for a specific role, each one a cog in the production machine. The illusion held, episode after episode, powered by quick hands, sharp eyes, and a shop crew that could turn a junkyard find into TV's most famous muscle car in a single day. Number 14. The welded doors on the General Lee weren't part of some grand design from the start. The truth is a lot more accidental. Early in production, a Charger's door latch broke just before a take. With time ticking and no quick fix, the director told John Schneider and Tom Wopat to climb in through the windows. It looked cool, it worked, and it stuck. Soon, the sight of Bo and Luke sliding in Duke's style became a signature move. Not every General Lee actually had its doors welded shut. Many just had busted latches or doors taped to stay closed for safety during jumps. But the image of the window entry was so iconic, fans and even later replica builders made it standard, turning a last-minute fix into TV folklore. Number 13. The horn. 5 trumpets, one unmistakable tune. The General Lee's Dixie horn wasn't in the original script. During the Georgia days, a local mechanic named Jerry Rushing pointed the crew to a parts shop in Macon that sold musical air horns. The first horn was installed on a whim. When the producers heard it, they knew they had something special. The sound mixer started timing stunts and punchlines to the horn's blast, and soon every General Lee was fitted with the 5-trumpet setup. The effect was so popular that aftermarket companies rushed to make Dixie horn kits for fans. Warner Brothers moved fast too, locking down licensing and raking in millions from horn sales alone. By the mid-'80s, you could buy a Dixie horn at any auto parts store in America, all because of a single impulse purchase on a sleepy Georgia morning. Number 12. The General Lee was a one-shot wonder when it came to big jumps. Despite all the ballast and reinforced suspension, physics always won. When a Charger hit the ground after a jump, sometimes landing with forces over 15 Gs, the frame twisted, the roof buckled, and the car was done. Insurance adjusters called these cars totaled the minute the wheels touched down. Even if the engine still ran, the unibody was toast. Mechanics might strip a few salvageable parts, but the body itself was headed for the scrapyard. Every jump car was built for a single moment on camera, not a second chance. The economics were brutal. It was cheaper and safer to prep a fresh Charger than risk a repaired one failing mid-stunt. That's why the General Lee became the most disposable icon in TV history. One leap, one landing, and then on to the next car. The show's destruction tally wasn't just spectacle, it was a business model, written in bent frames and claim forms. By the 3rd season, finding Chargers for the General Lee had become a full-blown crisis. Junkyards that once offered up cars for a few $100 started asking $2,000 or $3,000, sometimes more if they caught a whiff of Hollywood money. The price of a suitable Dodge Charger jumped by 300% over just a few years. Mechanics and procurement coordinators scoured classifieds, called in favors, and even paid finder's fees to anyone who could tip them off to a hidden stash. Some days, the crew would drive for hours, chasing leads that ended at rusted-out shells or cars missing half their parts. The pressure was relentless. Scripts demanded more jumps, the audience expected bigger stunts, and the supply of Chargers was vanishing fast. That's when the production team turned to spectacle. At Indian Dunes, the Baxley brothers ran a second-unit stunt machine built for destruction. They engineered custom ramps, longer, smoother, calculated to send cars flying farther and flatter. Each ramp was a science experiment, dialed in for speed, angle, and landing zone. The goal was simple: get the most dramatic footage possible before the cars disintegrated on impact. Nothing captured the chaos like Jump Fest. Under a tight deadline and with the budget on the line, the crew lined up 9 General Lees in a single day. Each car was prepped, ballasted, and given one shot at glory. Stunt drivers strapped in, hit the ramps at 60 miles an hour, and launched into the air, one after another, all for the camera. By sundown, every car was totaled. Some drivers limped away with bruises, a few needed stitches, but the footage banked that day fed episodes for months. Mechanics spent the night stripping salvageable parts, while procurement scrambled to find replacements for the next round. The General Lee wasn't just a TV car anymore. It was a consumable resource, sacrificed for the weekly promise of airborne mayhem. Every jump, every wreck, pushed the show's logistics to the breaking point, turning car sourcing into a race against time and rising costs. LE-1, the very first General Lee to fly on camera, didn't just survive its famous jump, it vanished into obscurity. For decades, it sat rusting behind a barn, forgotten until restorer Travis Bell tracked it down. Bell's authentication process was meticulous, matching welds, paint layers, and even the scars from that inaugural leap. When Lee 1 resurfaced, it became the crown jewel of General Lee collecting, eventually restored and sold at Barrett-Jackson to pro golfer Bubba Watson for a sum that turned heads across the car world. Watson later announced he would remove the Confederate flag from its roof, a decision that echoed far beyond the collector scene. The General Lee's merchandising power reached its peak in the 1980s. Warner Brothers licensed everything: die-cast cars, t-shirts, lunchboxes, and, of course, the Dixie horn. Licensing revenue soared into the tens of millions each year, fueling a cottage industry of replica builders and memorabilia dealers. For a while, the General Lee was as much a business as it was a TV legend. But the car's cultural standing changed overnight in 2015. Following the Charleston church shooting, Warner Brothers froze all General Lee licensing tied to the flag. TV Land yanked Dukes of Hazzard reruns within days. Major retailers pulled toys and model kits from shelves. The economic hit was immediate. Horn kit makers, replica builders, and car show organizers watched revenue streams evaporate. The fan community split. Some owners covered or removed their roof flags, while others insisted on preserving the car as it was. The General Lee's value at auction has swung wildly. Screen-used cars have sold for over $200,000, but the market's volatility was exposed by the infamous $9.9 million eBay bid on John Schneider's personal General Lee in 2015, a winning bid that defaulted, leaving the car unsold and the collector world buzzing. Today, only 17 confirmed originals are known to survive out of the hundreds destroyed, each one carrying the weight of both TV history and public debate. The General Lee isn't just a collectible, it's a living flashpoint caught between nostalgia, business, and the evolving story of American culture. At least 255 Dodge Chargers were sacrificed to create the General Lee's on-screen legend, but only 17 originals are confirmed to survive today. Behind every jump was a mix of sandbags, reinforced springs, and frantic overnight rebuilds, turning a single car illusion into an industrial operation that spanned states and consumed resources at a staggering rate. Documents show production costs soared alongside car scarcity, pushing the crew to stockpile footage and even use miniatures. Yet, the General Lee's image outlasted its parts, driving a multi-million-dollar merchandising empire and sparking a national debate when Warner Brothers halted licensing in 2015 after the Charleston shooting. Not every answer is clear. Exact jump counts and the fate of many wrecked cars remain lost to closed archives or junkyards. But the facts show the General Lee was never just a TV prop. Its story is a collision of engineering, economics, and culture, leaving a legacy that's as controversial as it is iconic.